Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Bridging Impact Podcast, the podcast that is passing wisdom to the next generation of athletes, coaches, and parents to transform leaders on and off the court. And in today's episode, we have a very special guest. Our guest today is Rachel Baribeau. Rachel is the author of the new book, Relentless Joy, and is also the founder of I'm Changing the Narrative and also a sportscaster big in the college football world. I'm really excited to have her on because I got the opportunity to listen to a podcast that she was on, the Positive University podcast by John Gordon, when I was a junior in college. I was able to connect with her then, and here we are 5 years later connecting, sharing wisdom on being our authentic selves as coaches and leaders, how to impact people and build those relationships that last a lifetime, and so much more. So without further ado, let's dive in. Hello, Rachel, and welcome to the Bridging Impact Podcast. I'm thrilled to have you on. I still remember when I was listening to Positive University by John Gordon, I found you and connected with you on Instagram in 2019 when I started my creator journey, and my creator journey has kind of taken me in some different steps and strides, and now I'm in the sports and impact space, and I feel like it's a perfect time for us to connect because you have a book coming out and you're in the world of sports and you are so focused on impact. So welcome to the show. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Well, thank you. And that just goes to show that you plant one seed in somebody and they don't forget it, and so something I said back then on, John Gordon's podcast, touched you, and we connected, and here we are, and I just love that about life.
I love that too, and it's like a little bit of a full circle moment and an opportunity for that seed to grow, and hopefully this conversation will produce a lot of fruit for our listeners. And the first question we always like to ask our guests is like, what kind of impact have sports had on your life? And super easy question, I know.
Everything. I mean, in terms of my professional life, friendships, love, I mean, all of it. I'll start close to home. My husband played at, Air Force. He was a wide receiver. So, he understands what I did for so long. What I did for so long in sportscasting was the runway and providing me the relationships, because I'm a relationship person, providing me the relationships to be able to start on changing the narrative. Without all of those relationships, people would not have let me in the door, but they let me in the door because they knew me, they'd heard about me, they knew I was a good person, those types of things. And it's sports has been everything to me. It's been part of my story, part of my journey. And it's so funny. I said to somebody the other day, I said, this person a while back, the first book agent I had of a book that didn't go anywhere, she was like, oh, yeah, I know exactly who you are. She's like, I'm a sports fan. And I laughed at this person. I said, there are people in the world that don't watch sports, would have no idea who I am, like, if you don't follow college sports. And so it just made me giggle a little bit that, there are people out there that do all sorts of things and don't pay attention to college baseball or track or football or whatever it is. Sports is everything to me.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the beautiful part about sports, and I'm sure you can, elaborate more on this, and I'd love to expand into I'm Changing the Narrative. It's just how much it teaches us about life, but even more important, the people it brings us, right? Those relationships that you're talking about. So can you talk about how, some of those relationships you had been forming as you're in your years as a sportscaster, trailblazing the industry? What do you think, what relationships really helped you form I'm Changing the Narrative?
I think, well, first of all, I mean, my mom and grandmother teaching me their ways, people first, people over money, people over opportunity, relationships over opportunity, people first, no matter what, then allowed me to become a sportscaster that was putting people first. I was not a gotcha reporter. I was not a breaking the headlines, so to speak. I wasn't doing that. I always put my relationships over anything, really. And that's why people trusted me. And that's why people let me tell their stories. In the book, there is a whole chapter about Dak Prescott and my experience with him. I had just lost my father. He had lost his mother a little bit farther back. And I went to do an interview with him, and we totally bonded over being in the club that nobody wants to be in. And that was Losing Your Parents Far Too Soon Club. We have tattoos on our wrists to signify our parents. And it was just this beautiful, symbiotic, open vulnerability interview to where the SID pulls me aside afterwards. And he's like, man, he's never got emotional like that except with Tom Rinaldi. And I'm like, Tom Rinaldi's a goat,
Right.
Storytelling. So I was honored, but I said to this SID, I said, it's because we're in a club that nobody wants to be in. We share each other's pain. And so I say that to say is that he then allowed me to tell that story in the book. He had to sign a release. He allowed me to tell that story. And the chapter is all about the power of vulnerability. That would have never happened had I not told him, hey, I'm raw. I'm 3 weeks out from losing my dad, and then it allowed him to share his pain. So, relationships again are everything, that's there. But I mean, I have friendships with so many coaches, and more importantly, as important, I would say their wives, but also my players. And I do call them my kings, my players, my queens, because I don't go and speak and then just leave. I create relationships. I've seen babies be born. I've been invited to weddings. I've driven 8 hours to be at weddings. I have gotten middle of the night, trigger warning, suicide phone calls, and they're all alive and thriving. And so I'm a relationship person, and I'm thankful for those relationships. Like just, right off the top of my head, Coach Fleck and Coach Locks, those are people that love me and know me and bring me in year after year after year and go to bat for me. I've been hosting the Chick-fil-A game. They have a panel, an all-star panel before the game. And I've been hosting that thing. Looking back, I've been hosting like 6 or 7 years, and they keep bringing me in because they know I'm going to do a good job, but I've got a great attitude. I'm a hard worker, and I'm a relationship person. So if anybody's listening to this, not anybody, all your people that are listening to this, I would say, man, start putting relationships above money, above aspirations, above hustle, above success, and you'll watch your life transform dramatically.
Wow. Yeah, no, I love that. And I think one question, I have regarding, relationships and putting it over money and, some of these different aspirations, like, could you give share a little bit of stories of what that exactly looks like and maybe some choices that you're like, okay, I decided to, have this opportunity to build a relationship with Dak Prescott. And that's, a connection that we had, but also with these coaches, I'm sure you're spending a lot of time with the athletes that you talk to, coaches that you talk to after you speak, right? You're not just going and speaking and leaving, right? Getting your quote unquote, getting your bag, you're talking and connecting and really listening to their stories about who they are.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember there was one particular story, and I won't name the outlet, but it was a national outlet, and they wanted to interview this coach, and they wanted him to go to the Waffle House and flip waffles and stuff. And they thought it would be funny, and they were going to pay me great money. And so I took it to his wife, and she was kind of his gatekeeper. And she was like, Rachel, I mean, we could do this. She was like, but he's not funny. Like, I don't mean to be mean, but he's not funny. Yeah. And I just don't think that he's going to love doing, he'll probably do it for you because the relationship. She was like, but and so I went with my gut and I turned it down. And I went back to my bosses at this large national media company, and I said, he's not going to do it. And that, cost me the bag. And I was a freelance reporter at the time, so I needed that money. But I still have that relationship with that husband and wife. He's still a coach, and I did the right thing there. And so I think when you choose those things, when you choose to put your relationships over the hustle or the headline, or stepping on somebody, I was just teaching my bonus daughter that recently. She's about to be 16. Is that if you step on people, it's always going to come back to you. They're always going to come back in your life. They're going to be like, you're going to be like, oh, hey, you again? I tried to step on you. I lied about you, or I stabbed you in the back, or whatever. Consequently, if you're good to people, those people also come back around too. And in the best possible way. I recently had I worked in Atlanta. I hosted with Cordell Stewart and a gentleman named Carl Dukes. Not a lot of women on the radio, sports talk radio in the afternoon. And there was a salesperson there. We were friends, just thought the world of him. And most recently, he's working at one of the largest media companies in the world. And so we reconnected, and he was like, look, we're going to help. I'm changing the narrative and, the nonprofit, yada, yada, yada. Well, then he reaches back out to me, and we've stayed on each other's radar recently. And he says, let me introduce you to the head of all podcasts at this international media company, and he's going to help you. And so now he's introduced me to this head of podcasting who wants to help me become a guest on all the largest podcasts all over the world. And it was because, and this is what I told my daughter, it was because way back when I was good to people, I put relationships first, and it came from this friend that introduced me to the guy, to the man, right? And I just, and it was such a neat lesson to be able to teach my bonus daughter that, hey, like, treat people well. They're going to come back one way or another. Treat people well.
I love that. That's so perfect. And I think there's so much that we can unpack there, but I think one of the core elements of it is trust, right? You're building trust and relationships with people, right? You're like, you had some off feeling about this opportunity at the Waffle House, and it just didn't feel like it would connect. And, at the time you may have needed that money to pay X rent or X bills or whatever it was, but you chose, right, to do right by that person. But then that person ends up, many years later, having that relationship, that trust. And I think one important part about trust is that vulnerability piece that you talked about a little bit earlier as well. That's one thing that I noticed when I following you just on social media, right? You post, you're raw, you're emotional. Like I can see, like it's not the same every single day. And I think it's almost like a way of like building relationships with your audience, and that's like a trust form. And so, can you talk about we talk a lot about leadership on Bridging Impact, and a lot of, I'm sure, changing the narrative is all about like leadership, leading ourselves. And can you talk about how vulnerability has really shaped your way of leading and connecting with others?
Yeah, I teach on a concept called radical vulnerability. And it means when you get radically vulnerable with people, it allows them to be radically vulnerable with you and let their walls down. Nothing is serving any of us by walking around and saying, I've got it all together. I got it all figured out. I've got it all together. And I also teach people this, that more people are drawn to your imperfections than they ever were your perfections. And we're over here trying to be, perfect. And we're dying under this albatross, this weight around our neck of perfection. And truth be told, people aren't drawn to Justin or to me because, I've got this perfect thing or that perfect thing. And guess what? None of my stuff's perfect. Like the movement isn't perfect. The marriage isn't perfect. None of it. And I just choose to show the real, unabridged side. And it's touched so many people, and people tell me it's magnetic because, they're like, wow, you went through that too. Wow. You went through addiction, abuse. You went through losing both your parents. You've lost everything. Oh, wait, you can relate to me. You know what I mean? And then people say to me sometimes, well, what if I haven't been through anything traumatic? Well, count your blessings that you haven't, but you're going to at some point, like, what if I had good love growing up? Well, then show people what good love is, right? Like if you saw good love growing up, it's your responsibility to teach people what good love looks like. So I just operate in that space. And I've just had so many people tell me over the years that that's the magic space where they can see themselves, and then it makes them feel comfortable sharing their own junk.
Right, the magic space. I think that's a really important part of all of this. And then with your book coming out, Relentless Joy, since I've seen you, share some of, the tragedies and different things and traumas that you have gone through, right? You still continue and to show up with, for lack of a better term, relentless joy. And I think it's probably a perfect book title and summary of who you are. I would love for you, kind of share a little bit and maybe even, inspire around, for those that may need to hear, they're going through stuff right now, about, just your mindset around relentless joy.
Yeah. It's for anybody who has been through some things, who feels blasted and barren, who's maybe grieving an opportunity, a person, a thing, a job, or whatever it is, a baby, a partner. But it's also for the person who has a good life, has kids, or has a good career, and has what the world says should make them happy, but they still feel like something's missing. And I wrote this book for all people in that regard. And I also love this book because it's a book on joy, but it's also gritty and vulnerable and raw. And I don't remember reading another book on joy where there's been, addiction talk and mental health talk and all of those things. Because usually joy is like happy, joy, and like, no, right. I'm sharing a different kind of joy, which is like, nails hanging on, like, like I'm in this, digging my heels in, I'm going to survive. Like, that's the kind of joy I'm talking about. And I think, the subtitle says, how to find, keep, and cultivate joy in a dark world. That's my personal subtitle. And I feel like we all need that because it is a dark world. All you got to do is get on social media and it's negative, 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 negative. We've got school shootings and shootings happening every day. We've got, wars and all the things, right? And it's enough to make your head spin. And if you're not out there fighting for your joy, it's, it's hard. And that's what I teach people in this book. It's one part self-help, one part a little bit of faith, a little bit of history. So there's some science in it. There's a journal aspect to it. And then at the end of each chapter, there's something that I love. It's called a joy start, which is like a jump start for your car, but a joy start for your soul. So I teach you a lesson. I might, like, for example, the chapter about Dak, I teach you a lesson. And then right at the end, the joy start like invites you to take that lesson and apply it to your life, like in real time. So you don't have to like wait till the end of the book to go, okay, well, let me figure out what kind of change I want to make. No, like it like invites you right there to apply it to your own life. Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, I've really enjoyed like the part where you can kind of work on it and work through it. And so, you talk about like fighting and scratching and clawing for joy, and without giving out too much of the book, like what does that like look like on a daily basis, because it can be very challenging, right? When you're facing with, different tasks, like from the day, it doesn't matter who we are, right? As people, we all face different things where we are feeling depleted of joy. So what does that, kind of scratch and claw look like?
Yeah, it means literally fighting for your joy. It means you may be going through a divorce, but recognizing the joy that is around you in your children who are, trying to love you and just showing up and breathing and living today, right? It might be, I like to use this example. It might be you're walking and you see a flower push up to the concrete, like it might be when I lost my mother. I was very open and raw about that and, be in my prayer closet praying. And I 2 years later, I had lunch with a couple and the man said, you didn't know me, but I prayed you through the loss of your mother. I was there on those lives and in your post when you were talking about losing your mother. And I was like, wow, like that's joy. And joy to me is the emotion that most has your back. It's waiting and begging to be noticed. There is joy in your life. And I don't care if you're flat broke, about to lose your apartment, you're on the verge in the thick of it, because I've been there. There's still joy. Trust me. It's taking a conscious effort to, I call it get your spiritual shovel, take a conscious effort and look for it and be open to it and be ready for it. And then also be willing to share it with other people. We got to share with the world what we want, right? So if I'm like wanting joy and wanting people to be kind to me, then I need to go out and be kind to people. And it could be just as simple as I had an interaction, a beautiful interaction with a woman yesterday at the Dollar General. And it was just me noticing. And I teach about this in the book. She had really pretty like ginger hair. She had, blue eyes. And I said, how are you today? And she said, well, I'm good. I'm about to get off, and I said, oh, what are you going to do with the rest of your day? And she said, I'm going to go lay in the pool. And she said, what about you? And I said, well, and I took this big breath and I said, I'm about to launch a book in 5 days. And she was like, what? And so she gave me a big high five.
Nice.
And she was asking about the book. And I said, hold on, I think I've got a bookmark in the car, which got all the information. And I come back in the store, Justin, and she's come out from behind the counter. She's standing in the doorway and she just grabs me and hugs me. It's just, she doesn't even ask, can I hug you? She just hugs me and she hangs on tight. And we were just two strangers 2 minutes ago, and now I know her name. Now I'm going to go back there. Now I'm probably going to give her a book, and sign a book for her and just bring it to her. And, just because she's another human being traveling along this path, and life may not have been easy for her either. And I just want to let her know that, she's not alone, and that she rocked my world with that hug, just by coming out from behind the counter while she was working and coming to hug me. And if you are bitter, and I've been bitter at times in my life, if you're bitter, you miss the stuff. You miss the Ashleys of the world. You miss the opportunity to connect. And I'm going to tell you something. I know very rich people. I know very successful people that are miserable and that are lonely. More success and more money and more things will not bring you happiness and joy. Connecting with an Ashley will. And I want to teach people how to do that. I want to teach pessimistic people how to do that. I want to teach negative people how to do that. I rode in an Uber one time. I was out doing some work at the Super Bowl, and I rode in this Uber, and we were talking about being open. And the Uber driver said to me, I didn't used to be like this. And I said, really? Because we're talking about having a conversation and just getting to know one another. And she said, yeah. She said, I was quite the pessimist. And she said, and then one day I just got sick and tired of myself. I got sick and tired of being sick and tired. And she said, so I got every book that I could read on self-help, on positivity, on all those things. And she said, I'm not toxically positive, and I'm not either, because I'm a big proponent of feeling your feelings. She said, but I changed. And it wasn't overnight. She said, but I started to see like the good in days and the good in people. And I started to notice things like that were out there that were sent just for me, like my favorite bird or a rainbow or, whatever it is. Right. And so it was so cool to hear somebody say that I was not naturally born like this, but I worked on it. And I do believe you can work on it. And that's what the book's all about.
I love that. That's really powerful. I just finished the book Mindset by Carol Dweck, right? About all about having that growth mindset. And I think a lot of times, right, we think of ourselves as, I'm an optimistic person or I'm a pessimistic person. We just put ourselves in a box, right? Versus, what you're talking about is noticing, right? What are the things that I can start noticing, like for me today, right? Like I had a kid, he came right up to me in camp today, gave me a high five, right? That brought me a little bit of joy, and just like go and seek that joy and like go cultivate it, go create it, go give it to other people, and then kind of like watch it. It doesn't mean that it's all going to be a joyous day, right?
But it's little bits of joy that are exactly vying for your attention, just like little bits of negativity are vying for your attention, and bitterness and anger and let me get you riled up. Let me get you angry at that person. Flip them off. Do this, But guess what? The same thing there's another thing that's competing, and it's not the same at all. It's joy. It's different. And it's saying, hey, I'm here too. I'm here too. Yeah.
I love it. That's like a choice of what we are kind of like going out and seeking and searching for. And that it's, I don't want to say it's work, right? But it is, you have to put a conscious effort for it. And I think one of the things is like, what do you think really helped you along this path of like going along and seeking joy, right? Like we talked about it, it's something that, we've learned. So like, how have you learned over the years about how to, seek and notice that joy?
I would say that it is work. It's good work, but it's work. I think a lot of us want change. We want success. We want, all these things in our lives, but we're not willing to do the work. And what happened with that girl in the Uber, what happened with me is, it's like, wow, I don't want to be this way anymore. Or there's a chapter in the book about dating. And I asked a hard question, said, would you want to date you? Not
good question.
Not public facing social media you, but would you want to date you? And so many of us, and I teach this too, so many of us, before I was married, we're out here looking for a good partner, but maybe in our deepest recesses of our soul, we're not a great partner ourselves. And so you got to work on dating you. Like, would you want to go to dinner with you? Would you want to have conversations with you? Do you talk all about yourself? Do you not have great money management skills? Is your toilet disgusting? Is there, are you a slob? Right. Are you, do you take care of yourself? Do you work out? All those things matter. And so there's an element of work to it. And I think at the very basis of everything was this idea. I was so desperately seeking from the world affirmation, and I wanted to be loved. And I had these ideas from childhood for some trauma that I was unlovable and unwanted. And so I was seeking that from the world. But here's the key. I wasn't giving it to myself. So I was seeking it from other people, but I didn't truly love myself. I didn't truly want, think that I was, amazing. Right. And I went on this journey along with my faith of self-love. And when I say I love myself enough to know that I've got blind spots. I love myself enough to know that I need work. I love myself enough to know that therapy is my jam. I just re-signed up for therapy and I'm a better person when I'm in therapy. I love myself enough to know those things, but also to say, you're a survivor, Rachel. Your middle name is Joy and you live up to it. And so I know those things about myself. I laugh at myself. I giggle at myself. I know I truly love myself. I love being by myself and I love being with others. And it's been this most beautiful journey. And that's what we teach in I'm Changing the Narrative, but also in the book is this idea of self-love, true self-love.
I love that. That's so important, right? Because we're always, I saw this interesting graphic, like when we're in our childhood, we spend a lot of time with our friends, right? And so that's, elementary school, middle school, high school, a little bit into college. And then as soon as we start getting to the workforce and as we, kind of get older, we end up spending more time with ourselves and more time alone. And I think developing that relationship with self, right? The more time you spend with yourself may, affect certain moods, right? As we, kind of get older. And so I still think that opportunity to, cultivate a relationship with self is one of the most important things that we can do.
Because guess what? And I interrupt you just to add, please. You can seek a partner all you want or friends all you want, but until you truly love yourself, you're always going to be looking for somebody else to affirm you or make you feel what you feel, right? And when you love yourself, you're like, okay. And then when you love yourself, you naturally create standards and boundaries by which people treat you. And that's really, really, really powerful.
That is powerful. And I think, just to share, on the topic of vulnerability, that's something that I have been challenged with as I've always, sought out, especially like words of affirmation, but just affirmation. I've always been a people pleaser. I've had this deep, urge to want to be liked by everyone. And so for me as a coach and a leader, that has been the biggest challenge for me is because, sometimes I can come off as, and I don't like the word too nice, right? But instead of always holding my players accountable and even in friendships and personal relationships, I just bite my tongue because I don't want to bite on anyone's toes or step on anyone's toes, not bite on anyone's toes. But
that too, but that was a little weird.
yeah, it was a little weird. So that's something that I'm still working through. But I know that about myself and it's something that I want to continue to work on. And, I love myself enough and love my friends enough that it's okay to disagree. Right. And same with my partner. And it's always that kind of continuous self-awareness and that development of self and, knowing that just because I am, hard on a certain, let's take the coach example. I'm hard on a certain kid because I have certain, standards and discipline and I want to hold them to that. And I know that they have this potential, right? That doesn't mean I don't love them, right? I still love them. And I think just knowing that internally and having that strength inside as a leader is something that I'm still growing into.
That's so good. And let me give you a little nugget straight from that I got straight from a living legend. So years ago, I met Jerry Kramer. I read his book growing up called Instant Replay. For those that don't know, famous lineman with the Green Bay Packers, played for Lombardi. I read this guy's, his autobiography, right? I'm hosting the Lombardis and I meet him and I'm like, what? You're the reason why I became a sportscaster. What? And so we meet and then I see him again later on at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but he tells me stories. He sits down and tells me a story about Vince Lombardi, and you're going to love this as a coach. He said one day he was playing, practice. It was practice. And he didn't have a great practice. And he comes in afterwards and Lombardi's yelling at people and whatever. And the locker room clears out. He had been yelling at him, Jerry saying, you're this, you're that, you're no good, you suck, you're this, you're that. And so Jerry is in the locker room. Everybody leaves. He's got his towel over his head. And he just says, maybe I do suck. Maybe I am. Maybe I am terrible. Maybe I should quit. And and he's kind of in it. And all of a sudden he feels a big old paw on his shoulder. And it was Vince Lombardi coming back. Oh gosh, make me tear up. Coming back. And he said, "I love you, son. I believe in you." And the lesson that he taught in that moment was, don't be afraid to cut somebody down, right? Like a stump, a tree, like, to start him over. But you got to make sure that you build him back up. That would have never, that Jerry Kramer would have never gone on to be who Jerry Kramer was had Vince Lombardi never come back in that locker room that day. So as a coach, I teach coaching is so different now these days with NIL and portals and, just the way we are, whatever level you're at, wherever you're coaching. But I always tell coaches, don't be afraid to deconstruct them. But please, it is so critical that you don't forget to build their souls back up and say, "I believe in you. I see you. You're amazing. I'm hard on you because I see you, because I believe in you." And if you don't, that's when you can permanently, you can damage a kid, right? As a coach, whoever you're coaching. But I just love that story from Jerry Kramer. I'm like, I got a Vince Lombardi book. I'm like, but I got a personal Vince Lombardi story. Like, what? So crazy.
That's beautiful. I mean, and that's a great story. And I think that, is one of the arts of coaching, right? And just making sure that we always let our players know at the end of the day, like, we love them. And then, especially for me, I'm in the youth sports world. I'm working with, high school, even younger athletes, and just knowing that sports is a wonderful, wonderful vehicle to transform lives. And I'd love for you to, in this back, kind of fourth quarter of the podcast, share a little bit about, what I'm Changing the Narrative is all about, and the mission and the vision, and, how it's transforming lives through sports.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a movement. It's global. We've been around the world in terms of our reach, but we've been around for almost 7 years. And in 7 years, it started with college athletes, college football players. And then along the way, I decided and believed that I needed to start speaking to female athletes too. And then along the way, I created this idea. It came from my church, of this idea of kings and queens. And then it became more inclusive: kings, queens, royals. And then I started speaking, like I said, to all athletes, administration, coaches. And we were talking about mental health before the pandemic started, because I had a dark night of the soul where I almost took my own life after my mom passed away. And so we began to talk about that. That blew the lid off of it. And then now it's even expanded to churches, halfway houses, border patrol, law enforcement, high schools, K-5, corporations, prison ministry. Like, wherever they'll have me, I'll go. And I always say, age 6 to 96, you're never too old or too young to be who you were created to be. And it's amazing. And so now in 7 years, we'll be 7 in August. In 7 years, I've worked with 60 plus colleges, many of them multiple times. I've worked again with Big 10, Big 12, Northern Sun. I'm going to be working in the NFL now. I got called by the NFL, Border Patrol, law enforcement. It's just been an unthinkable ride. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And can you, give the listeners a little bit of, I don't want to give up your whole speech and all your work, but I would love for you to, share what is that experience like for them? What is the message you're conveying across to those that you get the opportunity to work with?
Everyone's different. It depends on if I've addressed them before, but, I'm going to start and say, for some of you, you'll walk out of here and you'll never be the same. And so I'm just asking you to open your heart a millimeter to me. And then we get right into it. We move fast. We might cry. We're going to laugh. You might hoop and holler, but we're going to talk about everything from that self-love to loving each other well. If I'm talking to men, we're going to talk about masculinity, about conventional ideas of masculinity in terms of your mental health. We're going to talk about relationships. We're going to talk about purpose, finding what sets your soul on fire and running towards it with everything you've got. We are going to talk sometimes about joy. So every coach and outlet is different about what they want me to talk about, but those are a few top level things. And what I've learned as I continue to study the art of speaking, because you don't get better. And I would have quit at this a long time ago. PJ Fleck came to me years ago and he said, "Rachel, if you'll have more than one talk, we'll continue to have you in every year because our players trust you. So if you'll have more than one talk, we'll continue to have you in." And he was true to his word. And because I can now talk, he's the one that challenged me to do it. So now I can talk about dating. I can talk about mental health. I can talk about joy. I can talk about purpose. You know what I mean? Like, I can talk about all these things. And he was a huge proponent of me doing that. And I've been with Minnesota every year for the past 7 years. And it's just insane. I've hosted mental health games with them. That's one of my programs where I'm family. I come in and I'm family, and Maryland's another one. So yeah, there's a lot of things, but it moves quickly. I'm very passionate, and hopefully you'll take notes, and hopefully something that I say in my talk will make you think, will make you feel, and actually go out and act on it.
Yeah, I love that. Having that action, right? That action piece of wanting to, change and transform people. So with that, I would love, for a young coach who has a vision and a message that is similar about impacting youth, like what, and for those that are listening too, what advice would you give for those who just want to are on similar missions, just want to open people's heart, teach them about, loving themselves and, kind of transforming their own leadership ability and unlocking their own potential? Like what have you learned along that journey that you pass on to your younger self?
Yeah, so I would say the first thing that I like to share with coaches is, and I hear this from players all the time, they don't want to be a commodity, and they don't want to be a number, no matter what level you're coaching at. They want to be seen for their whole soul, They want their coaches to know, and I'm being a little, going a little bit far with this example, but my favorite color, what I like to eat, but really like take an interest in who they are, like what's going on at home. What do they like to do when they're not, playing your sport? What are their gifts and talents? Yeah. What do they dream of being? What's broken their heart? 6 years old, we have 6-year-olds with mental health issues. They've had broken hearts. They've had things that have let them down. What's going on with them? Coach the whole human being. That is so, so big. And I hear it from so many athletes. They don't care about me. I'm only a number. They don't care. I'm riding the bench. They don't see me. And so that is so huge for me to be able to impart to coaches. The other thing I would say is to coaches is you cannot pour from an empty cup. If you are not taking care of yourself and you are blasted and barren and you aren't participating in any sort of soul care, you're going to go to work and take it out on those kids or whatever age they are. And you don't mean to, they just bump into your cup and you spill your funky junk on them. So you have to take care of your own soul. You have to, because whether you think it or not, you are expressing it and it is spilling out at work.
That's a lot of great wisdom right there, right? Coaching the entire human being, getting to know them, and kind of going back to the beginning of our, conversation, talking about relationships, just building relationships, building trust, and then building that trust within yourself, right? I can't be trusted if I'm on 0 hours of sleep and no food when I'm showing up to practice. I don't know what kind of X's and O's. I don't know what I'm going to end up yelling at them. So I think, just being able to balance it and do both of that. And so, for those that are listening, how can people, find your book? Your book just came out yesterday, so I'm really excited to, share that with the world. And, where else can they follow on Changing the Narrative and yourself?
Yeah, so I actually have a copy of the book, so I'm going to step away. Hold on. I have a copy here. I want to show everybody so they know what they're looking for. It's a blue book. It's called Relentless Joy, and I'm on the cover. And so you can grab it anywhere where books are sold. You can grab it at Amazon. You can grab it Target, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold. Funny enough, Amazon started shipping it a week early, and I was starting to freak out. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, this is not good. Everything's supposed to launch on the 20th, like what,
Right.
And I started to freak out about it. And then I just said, you know what, like in my spirit, I heard God tell me somebody needs that book early. Somebody needs that book a week early. Somebody's suicidal or depressed, or somebody has a loved one that's about to leave this planet that they need to make amends with. Like, you don't know, Rachel, but I know, and I know whose hands it's going to get in. And I would just say, it makes a great gift. It's for both men and women. There's a sports aspect. There's dating. There's all sorts of stuff in this book. And the best thing I would ask people to do is, if you love it, throw it up on social media and share it with others, because you can do all the ads and all of those things. But the best recommendation still is, I read this book and I loved it, and you should grab it too. And then people are, oh really? I'll grab it. I'll put that in my cart. And then, Amazon, it's there the next day. So So that's how they can find it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I will definitely grab myself a copy, give it a read, and then a recommendation on our page as well. Where else can people connect with you on social media for I'm Changing the Narrative and yourself?
Yeah, so if you go to Rachel Baribeau on any of my socials, there's a link to I'm Changing the Narrative. You can also go to the letter I, the letter M, changingthenarrative.org. That's imchangingthenarrative.org. All the information on the movement, videos, how to get involved, what we do, tons of free resources. We're really big on free resources for parents, for people, for school systems. And then from there, you can find my page, rachelbaribeau.com. And so that's great too. So I love meeting new people. I love hearing from people. I am not the person on social media that doesn't get the social aspect of it. If you comment to me, I'm more than likely going to comment back. It might take me a few days, but I love meeting people. I've met some of the most amazing people from the internet, that have become like best friends of mine. I've had people at my wedding, that I've met through the internet. I'm not kidding you. I've had 2 people that fell in love in one of my courses that are literally engaged, and they fell in love in one of my courses. And so I'm big on the power of connection, if you can't tell.
All right. Well, I love that. Hey, if you're looking for love, maybe, hit Rachel up, take one of her courses. But I appreciate it so much. I know you're really busy. You got the book launch, and, it's a heartfelt thank you, because I've been trying to get you on for a long time, and I'm glad that it finally ended up working out. And I really appreciate all the wisdom. So thanks so much, Rachel, and I look forward to giving Relentless Joy a read.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bridging Impact Podcast. We'd love it if you would like, subscribe, leave a comment and a review on whatever platform you're on. It's the best way to help us grow. We appreciate you for doing that. We'll shout you out on social media. I'd also love if you connected with me on social media. Let me know your thoughts, and this is why I do it. I want to share knowledge and wisdom from experienced leaders to people like yourself and myself, so we can have this dialogue and move forward, make an impact on the world. So stay tuned, stay subscribed. Cheers.